compliance.
My big fear is always that nobody will join us and we'll just we'll just sit and chat to ourselves then.
It's called the Lisa and Pat chat, isn't it? Really? No, I think it's so good, and it goes out to a lot of people. So
yeah,
hopefully it helps, even if people just take one thing from it. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Welcome to those that have joined us. Thank you. We were just talking holidays just before we came on. So hopefully you've all had a holiday or about to have a holiday. It feels a bit weird. For those I'm kind of up north, and it feels like we're on the edge of summer now. It's a bit
Yes.
It's a bit weird. I feel like because summer feels like it starts much earlier these days. So
I agree. Yeah, I do agree. I think there is, I mean, I don't think this week's going to be great. But I think the signs are that it's going to perk up later in the week, and
yeah,
hopefully summer will be back properly then.
well, hopefully we've had an early one and a late one. We've not done bad, but yeah, welcome to those that have come. We do appreciate you taking the time out, and we hope that you all managed to get some lunch. So my name's Lisa. I'm the chair of Adam, and we are joined by the wonderful Pat Langley from Dentistry Compliance. For those that haven't joined us before, this is a regular webinar that we love to do because obviously compliance never ends. Our job is never done. There's always something. So I thought we'd start, Pat, if it's okay with you, if we have kind of a general, what's been going on in the world of compliance at the moment, what is coming up that we need to perhaps be aware of. I've got a couple of bits that I wanted to mention later on, but most of all, if any of you have any specific questions, please do feel free to ask us. If you don't feel comfortable asking, then contact us after. We're more than happy to have some time one-to-one with you. That's not a problem at all. So Pat, what's going on?
Well, good question, actually, Lisa. So I had a meeting with somebody who works at the CQC last week, and I was really quite surprised that she told me that there is quite a lot of what she described as serious enforcement action going on at the moment. Now, it could just be in the area that she works in, as in the geographic location, or it could be countrywide. I haven't looked at the latest CQC reports to confirm that, but she did describe it as, a number of people getting into a bit of a pickle. She didn't say what the pickle was, but she did say that it's enough for what she described as serious enforcement action. So I thought that was a bit of a surprise, actually, because I haven't heard that talked about on social media in particular. So I don't know if it's kind of under the radar of social media or not, but I think it does mean it's all the more important that everybody is always ready for a CQC inspection. And one of my favorite mantra, I've got a few, as you know, is that compliance isn't just for your inspection, it's for life. So that making sure that you have everything up to date. And by that, I don't mean just making sure your policies are up to date. I mean things like your risk assessments and your audits, and really important with them is firstly, obviously, doing them. Secondly, not doing them just as a tick list where somebody's going down and saying, yes, 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 we do all of that, when they don't, because then that means that the practice manager then doesn't really know whether it's an accurate representation of what's going on in the practice or not. And then the other really important point is to make sure that actions arising from risk assessments and audits are followed up by a named person with a date. So those are the things that are really, really important. And talking to a new startup dental group recently, some experienced people working with them. They said that one of the big things that they have noticed is this lack of action following an audit or a risk assessment. So I think staying on top of that is really important. How do you make sure that happens in your practice, Lisa?
Well, goes to my glamorous assistant to my right.
Absolutely.
Gilly. I am blessed to have Gilly that takes care of pretty much, all of the compliance in our practice.
Sure.
It is a role in itself. And I know you guys are probably thinking, well, that's all right for you. But when you're a very big practice of 40 odd, it is needed. Lots, 8 surgeries full time. It's a lot. And Gilly do get frustrated, Gilly, don't you?
What do you get frustrated with, Gilly?
I think I get a little bit frustrated with not every people going through the motions and doing the jobs and doing what they need, doing their tick lists, but not often thinking about why they're doing things and the importance of them. I think, and even just the basics of what we do day in, day out, opening up a surgery, shutting down a surgery. Actually, those things really, really matter, because they're the things that are actually keeping us safe. It's not just emotion. It's natural. There's a reason behind every single little thing that we do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then that brings me to another of my favorite mantra, which is don't do this just because the regulators tell you to do it. Do it because, as you've just said, it really matters. I used an example recently of a fire risk assessment, and I've personally either seen or known of more than a few practices that have burnt down, and nobody ever wants to go there. And it's one of those things that you think, well, it's never going to happen to me until it does. And so I think quite often when we do our in-practice audits, compliance audits, we find that there has been a fire risk assessment undertaken, but the an external source one, but the actions haven't been followed up. And if it's something like you need fire doors or you need more fire extinguishers, that really could be the difference between your practice not burning down and actually it actually burning down. So I think you're completely right, Gilly, that these things matter, not just because the CQC says they matter or whatever regulator, they matter because they matter. And in one of my absolute pet hates is audits and risk assessments that are just as done as tick boxes. It's a waste of time, paper, if you do it on paper, and time is money, so it's a waste of money as well. So doing risk assessments and audits authentically and using them for the purpose for which they're intended, which is to identify risks and things that are not as they should be, is really important.
I think that's really, it's so important. And from a a management point of view, doing these things to identify those problems before they actually could happen.
Definitely.
And yes, some of them are about health and safety, but actually some of them are about just managing and avoiding or lowering the risk of complaints, or when something goes wrong. I believe we are a very compliant practice. We work really hard at it. And still things go wrong, things happen.
They do.
We've had, patients fall over, in the building, there's things that happen, mistakes happen, and it's human error. And sometimes the bigger the practice, the more you get. I'm sure we get more medical emergencies than I think most of the practices that I visit, because I'm like, oh, this happened and that's happened. It's like, oh, we've never had anything like that. And I think, oh my goodness. And I think it is just because we're a really big practice to an extent, but it's about these things can happen, and actually you know, do we want to tick the CPR box, or do we actually want to make sure everyone is trained to the, you know, a higher level, you know, and we're not just doing it because we have to, we're doing it because actually we blinking want to, because it's panicking.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Emergency. And I think, you know, just it helps me manage the practice when I know things are compliant, you know, and whether it's medical history audits or x-ray audits, it's all there for a reason. And yes, the CQC like to see we're doing it, but actually it's what we should be doing.
Exactly. And yeah, and that's been my argument right from the start of CQC. So the CQC are not looking for anything that wasn't always required pre-CQC and required since CQC, but not by the CQC, if that makes sense. So things like the ionizing radiation regulations and IRMA, you know, those have always been around. They've changed recently. But the reason we have to comply with those is so that we don't irradiate people unnecessarily, you know, because of the risks of cancer. And so, you know, the legislation around radiographs is all designed to protect the patient and protect the team members. Never mind what the CQC says about it, it's there for a really good reason. And all of it is, and none of it's any different. It is all the same story.
Yeah. One thing that's been quite sort of on my radar a little bit, from as you know, I go and support lots of practices, go in and do training, and I do get concerned quite often. Practice managers have taken over from someone else. Sometimes the compliance is great, sometimes it's great, but it's not, there's not been a good enough handover. Sometimes they have no idea where that person is, or where the practice is, in terms of, well, am I compliant? Because I actually, as we said, another one of our sayings, I know we don't know what we don't know. But also there's a lot of times when practices are bought, and sometimes the practice managers are left out of that loop entirely, and then this new owner comes in and the practice managers are kind of like, well, where the hell are we up to? So obviously there's not much of a consistency thing, and I know that's obviously a bit of a concern for the well-led side of things, but looking at the current situation, it's not the practice managers' fault if that wasn't their job before the owners left. And the new owners have come in, and we all know that due diligence goes on, but they touch the surface with compliance, really, due diligence wise.
Couldn't agree more.
What would you do for the practice manager? Obviously they can invest and start looking forward, but with audits and things, if they've not been done, where does that leave the practice?
That's a long, complicated question, and there are lots of bits to it that really excite me. So personally, I'm very happy to go on record as saying that anyone who buys a practice without doing clinical due diligence, as in compliance due diligence, is asking for trouble, because you're buying something you just don't know. You know, you wouldn't buy a house without having a survey done. And so, as you've just so rightly said, Lisa, the legal due diligence, which is long and arduous and time consuming, and some of it seems pointless, scratches the surface. What if you get in there and the practice, yes, is non-compliant, but it's even worse than being non-compliant. It's going to cost the new owner a huge amount of money to put it all right. So I would like to see a lot of noise made everywhere about the importance of doing clinical due diligence, clinical compliance due diligence before you purchase a practice. Now, the agents and sometimes the lawyers, more the agents though, that are handling the sale and purchase, don't want to put clinical due diligence in place because it's going to hold the process up. But my argument would always be, well, better you hold the process up for a short time than find out you need to spend £50,000 on putting the practice into a compliant state. because it isn't just about the risk assessments and audits. That's bad enough. But what if you find that the flooring's all non-compliant and that the lawyers haven't asked about that? So the lawyers ask questions that they think are important, but they're not necessarily always the important ones. So that's what I would say as a starting point. If anybody knows of anybody who is wanting to buy a practice, please urge them to do clinical due diligence, plus, in my opinion, a patient record audit, particularly if it is a capitation-based practice. So if you've got a lot of capitation patients in the practice, how do you know what you're buying? So a patient record audit that is done by, needs to be done by a clinician, because looking for things like supervised neglect and at the other end of the scale, overtreatment, potential overtreatment. So that doesn't help the poor practice manager who is now in this terrible situation where it wasn't their job to do it before and now suddenly it is. So I would say this because we have a system. I think it's very challenging to do this without a system. And I think, so obviously we have Dentistry Compliance, which we, as you guys know, we deliberately make as simple as we possibly can. Because the other thing we find actually when we go into practices sometimes is that if the system is very complicated, then quite often the practice manager has kind of gone, oh dear, there's just far too much to do here. And there'll be new owners coming in soon anyway, and you know, it'll all come out in the wash, if you like. Now, and I think, I mean, any system, compliance system, is only as good as the information that's put into it and how it's used. So you can have a system, but if the system hasn't been used or hasn't been used properly, then yes, you're likely to find a massive problem. And it's very, very common, I think, that a practice manager leaves and then it is discovered that actually they haven't been doing what they should have done, and it leaves a massive, massive problem for the new incoming practice manager. Now, there are lots of people who are supremely well organized, like both of you. There are lots who aren't, though. And I do think that trying to do it without a system is a system that supports you as well, because this is a difficult situation. And I think that what you want is someone who can give you the personal touch, who can be there for you so that you can phone up and say, well, I found this, what do I do about that? I found that, I can do whatever about that. So I think get help, really. Another of my favorite sayings, know when to send Lassie out for help and rescue you, because trying to do this on your own is very, very challenging. Do you guys agree with me on that?
It is, yeah. I've come across, you know, I do recommend, you know, to all my practices that I work with and to many managers, Dentistry Compliance, because, you know, but I think the worrying part for me is that, you know, quite often the owners will say, okay, let's get it. There you go. And they think, oh, we're compliant now, and the practice we're going, I don't think so, matey.
No,
you know?
No, that's right. I mean, I work with a practice, or we as my team actually worked with a practice a number of years ago that they were selling to Bupa, and they had a system, not ours and not one of the other well-known systems, and all they had was the stuff on an Excel spreadsheet. So they hadn't done anything with it. So as you say, you know, they'd been given this system and then hadn't looked at it from the day they took the system on to the day Bupa came asking, so what have you done? Where is this and where's that? And they were in a terrible pickle. And actually one of our team went in and spent 5 days with them helping them through the mess. So yes, you're right. Just having a system doesn't guarantee that you're compliant, but I think, I mean, I hope less and less that happens, but it does still happen.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one thing I've always banged on about as a practice manager, and I can see when it's not happening, how draining it can be on a practice manager. And get the whole team involved, delegate, train them to be able to do it. I'm not saying dump it on people and kind of hope for the best. You know, you're going to obviously you want to oversee it, but you know, particularly in my practice, you know, I know there's parts of my job that Gilly's way better than me, which is why we've ended up with Gilly doing the compliance. My thing is business growth, business development, which means Gilly doing that means I've been able to develop the business. It's you know, having conversations with owners, or if you're an owner, having to think about who needs to do what and what will that then mean. Because if I'm spending all my time doing compliance and not business growth, what does that look like on the profit margin? You know, and we do need to look at practice management as a business. You know, I know different practice managers, there's a massive scope. Some do certain things that certain others don't, and you know, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. If you're not being landed with some parts of the job, that's, take it, be happy. But if you are expected to do everything, you cannot do that on your own. You will burn out. You won't be able to give it everything you give it. Get some nurses, bring them through, upskill them, get as many people involved, get reception involved. It is a whole practice job.
Completely agree, Lisa. And then while we're on the subject of owners, I think it is incredibly important that the practice owner, whether they agree with this or not, but it is very much in favor of compliance, because everything's, yes, of course, the practice manager leads the team. Ultimately, though, it is the owner. And the owners, it's essential that the owners have the right attitude. And if you don't, then that attitude so if the owner's attitude, which I've heard dozens of times, is I hate compliance, it's all a load of nonsense. If that is the owner's attitude, that is the attitude that will go through the whole team. And then you've got an even worse situation where the practice manager is trying to do something and none of the team are interested because of the owner's attitude. So I think at that point in time, the only thing a practice manager can do is to have a one-to-one chat with the principal and just talk it through. And, you know, I've seen this over and over again. You know, compliance is a load of rubbish. We shouldn't be doing this. It's not about patient care. So there you are, practice manager, you sort it out. It's nothing to do with me. And that's a recipe for disaster.
It is. And I think one thing I've learned in my, gosh, nearly 30 years is having the relationship with your owners where you can say, you're paying me to do a job. And, you know, poor Gilly, there's things, and Gilly's very diligent. Gilly goes off and does, you've just done a health and safety update, IPC update. Gilly goes above and beyond, and we are very lucky to be able to send her off to do those things. And Gilly will come back with some extra things that people are doing. I know in Scotland that we don't have to do, and it's like, should we be doing them? You know, when we talk about what's sensible, we're not doing things for the sake of it, but when there's something that needs to be done and it's the right thing to do, not just the compliant thing to do, you know, having a conversation with the owners to get them on board, unless they would like to do the compliance themselves, which ultimately will be their responsibility, they have to be respectful of the fact that you are going to do a good job of this. And you know, we've had conversations in the office, you know, and Steve, we've got great owners, and we've had conversations in the office where we've been met with, oh, you want us to do what? And that's the polite version. And we've gone, okay, vent, but you understand, but we know that they know it's the right thing anyway. And we're like, right, so the message when you go out of this office door is positive, because if you're not positive, no one else is going to be.
Correct.
And we do have to be that assertive manager with it,
Yeah,
because
you
it's
do.
so important.
You do. You do. And I think there are various ways you can do that. And, you know, without it being a massive confrontation. But I think, you know, just talking about, you know, we need to do this because it's the right thing to do. And actually using that phrase, you know, let's not do it because the CQC say we need to do it. Let's do it because it's the right thing to do. That's really hard to argue with. In fact, it's impossible, because you're then appealing to professional ethics,
Yeah,
and morals and good stuff like that, rather than just something that a lot of principals see as just an unnecessary evil.
completely.
And I think if you appeal to professional ethics in owners that are less inclined to think that compliance is important, then that's the right way to go, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and definitely sell it to them. You know, the more compliant we are, the safer we are, you know,
Yeah.
better the business. We want, and it goes through to culture. I personally think, with the rest of the team, you know, I want to work in a practice. Actually, we can say hand on heart, we are blinking proud to be here, because we know we are doing a good job and making sure, yes, you know, the practice is safe and caring, all those things that we should be doing anyway. But, you know, that measuring stick of actually, so we can say, yeah, we do. I had a bit of a confrontation with a patient last week. It was it was ridiculous, to be honest. We'd had some safety railings put at the front of the building, basically.
A few years ago, actually.
A couple of years ago, actually, yeah. Anyway, we'd had to move the bike rack to the back of the building, because the railings meant that they couldn't access the bike rack. So we'd moved the bike rack, and we had an incident, and completely not our fault. And it was found to be, you know, this gentleman was really poorly and such like, where he'd fallen over. And so we wanted to go above and beyond. Just we didn't have to have them, but we wanted to, you know, we wanted to. And this patient come in and made a complaint that the bike rack wasn't, it's like, look, the bike rack's at the back, we can't have it on the side, it's a public road, blah blah blah. We've had these railings, it's a great thing that we've done. Well, you're all bloody ridiculous. He actually did an awful review. Awful, that management need to pull their socks up. I'm like, oh my goodness, you're getting bashed for doing the right thing, for doing a good thing to make sure your patients are safer. He said, you know, well, you should have a door on the safety railing so you can walk through it. I said, well, that wouldn't be a safety railing in that case. And it was just the most nonsense conversation. But I knew at the heart of it, I probably got a bit more defensive than, you know, I work with a lot of practice on complaint handling, and my first rule is don't take it personally. And I actually did.
Impossible not to.
Take the emotion out, Lisa. Take the emotion. I think it was the pull your socks up comment that really, really peed me off.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's hard, because, you know, you've done the right thing. We spent hundreds of pounds on some safety railings, and this man was complaining that it didn't have a door to get through to a bike rack, which we'd actually move around the back anyway. And, you know, I think it just goes to show that sometimes, you know, people don't see the benefit of what you're trying to do. But we can go to sleep at night and know that actually.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, there are lots of people in this odd world we live in with some very odd ideas, and who are just totally self-absorbed and don't even think about anybody else. You know, and of course you've done the right thing, but to be told to pull your socks up for doing the right thing, that's pretty hard not to be defensive about that.
Well, I think my closing comment of, unless you have a health and safety qualification that can tell me different from my advice that we've been given, basically bugger off. Was kind of the thing. And he did well. I think we agreed to disagree in the end, but, you know, at the end of the day, you can sleep at night. And I know sometimes you do get stuck with no, we're not doing that, or well, we'll do it just if we have to, or well, we'll do it when we know we've got an inspection. And I think as practice managers, there is an element of you need to be able to put your recommendations down in an email and just say, okay, this is my recommendations. If they choose not to go ahead with that, then that's a different ball game that needs to be, you need to make decisions there. And some are bigger than others. There's some compromises and there's some non-negotiables, I think, as far as managers.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned complaints there, Lisa. How many complaints, both that you have at your practice and that you encounter, are to do with communication issues, and how many would you say are to do with the patient not having understood their treatment options? And how does it all pan out?
So
and that's the reason for asking you. So what's your view on that?
It's mainly I get not just in my practice, because obviously I look after quite a lot. It's not just all me.
No, I know. I know that.
Is a lot of the time there's quite a few complaints about NHS patients that have been failing appointments, and the practice is no longer willing to see them. That's quite a big one. Also, quite aggressive patients is quite a big one, being unreasonable, or they've got a complaint, but the way they've gone about it is quite aggressive. And we've said, we're happy to manage your complaint, but we're not happy to manage that level of aggression. A lot of the time it's communication, and you hit the nail on the head. Patients not understanding and being consented, or really given the full options. And I think this has come down to a couple of things. Us not looking at how that patient journey is, being in the patient's shoes. Does the patient feel rushed? Do they feel like they're not treated fairly because they're NHS patients? The dentists are under the pressure, particularly the first quarter of the year, to probably get a lot of UDAs, more than they'd normally get. Standards definitely drop. And I say to so many dentists with genuine care, something's going to happen. You cannot, if you're going at a pace that's not really, it's not consistent, you can't continue at that pace. Something's going to happen. It's going to be health and safety, it's going to be a patient complaint, it's going to be a clinical problem, and those, they happen, and it really upsets me because it's unavoidable. And this comes down to managing the diary properly, making sure that there's zones, that there's correct timings, and all of these type of audits that we don't have to do but should do, can really help prevent these things. Because probably 2-3 times a week I'm getting my clients or other people coming to me and asking if I can help manage a complaint. And I've worked quite closely this year with the BDA Indemnity, who were great, and the GDC was there, and the private complaints. It was all, I was kind of like, oh, I'm in good company here. It was really good. But they brought me in to talk about, okay, complaint handling is fine for these owners that are going to these, who've got the indemnity, but how do we teach our team to manage them? And that was so important. It's like, we've got to get past with complaints the fact that this isn't down to one person, the practice manager. It's not down to the owner, it's down to every single person in that practice.
It is.
And it's like, it needs to be like a sticker up, doesn't it? Go right through the middle.
Yeah, definitely. The reason for asking is that we've recently at Dentistry Compliance, we've recently launched a fantastic consent product. And it is really good. You should have a demo, actually, Lisa. Yes. It is fantastic, because what this product does is it makes sure that you have as much evidence as you can that the patient has understood. So the patient watches a short 3.5 minute video on the procedure. So let's say it's an endo. They watch the procedure and then they have to answer about 5 questions on it. And if they get one of the questions wrong, then the video takes them back to the point in the video where it's explained, and they don't get to the end until they've given the right answer. I guess they could just tick a different one each time, but the idea is that the dentist then has confidence that the patient has understood, because I think quite often clinicians will just impart information, and as you say, Lisa, very often they're rushed, particularly end of year, end of UDA year, and they will say, well, you could have this, you could have this, you could have this, you could have this, and if you're lucky, they might have explained that what the risks and benefits are. But what they almost never do is to take time. It's probably an exaggeration. What they often don't do is to take time to understand whether the patient has understood. And that is the missing link. And so this new product that we've had called Dentistry Consent fills that missing link. But we're just starting to talk about how best to deliver the messages to be as helpful as possible to the clinicians, because my experience is that most clinicians think they've got consent until they find themselves standing in front of the GDC. Yeah. And so if you say to a dentist, do you get consent? Oh, yes, I do. Well, how do you get consent? Well, I ask the patient to sign something, but I always liken that to, let's say you're going on your holiday, since we're in holiday season, and your flight's late and arrives late, and you get to the car hire desk and you say, can I have my car now? And they say, yes, just sign here to consent to all these terms and conditions. And do you read it through? Do you understand it? Do you ask questions about it? No, it's midnight and you want to get to wherever you're going and you sign it, but that is not any kind of consent. So that would never stand up anywhere. And that, I think, is what happens in dental practices. So I think clinicians rely far too much on what they think is consent, just being a signature on a piece of paper that they don't really understand what they're signing for. Now, that all falls apart then when there's a complaint and all the patient has to say is, yes, but I didn't understand what I was signing for.
Yeah.
And that's it, falls apart. And
this is the thing. It's like, you know, I've had many conversations with clinicians and where we've been concerned about consent and said, you know, you could say to the patient, you know, could you just reiterate?
Yes,
what you just said.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, I'm not comfortable doing that. And it's like, well, okay, so I mean, this is obviously a very good alternative. Most of the complaints that go forward, in my experience, dentists end up refunding. Just do a refund. Consent process gives you the power. Correct consent process gives you the power to say, hang on a minute, no.
Yes, it does.
And it's such a shame. People roll over. We all know indemnifiers very much roll over because they find a gap, and that gap I'll be brave comment, 99% of the time it's because there's a gap in the note and consent process.
Yes, definitely. And I think there's this misunderstanding that consent is an event, as in signing a form. It isn't. Yeah. It's a process. And what's in the records is really, really important. That when I was practicing, that's what I did. I would quite often say to a patient, now, what is it we're doing for you today? And they'd say, well, you know what we're doing today. And I say, yeah, I know. I'm just checking you know that what we're doing. And, you know, if you lighten it up a little bit like that, then I think it makes it less uncomfortable. But, you know, clinicians who are very good at getting consent, a lot of them do that. They say, I want you to tell me what you think the options are, what the risks and benefits are. And just because I think also patients quite often switch off. So they're listening to, oh, well, you know, I've got a gap, and they'll have a fixed view on what they think I can have a screw-in tooth there. So they don't listen to all the other options, and they just assume that you know, they're going to have what they think they've come for. And I think it is fraught with difficulty. I really do. And I've spent probably 25 years helping dentists who found themselves in a real bad place over not having consent when they thought they did. And so when I first saw this product last year, I thought, that's it, that's wonderful. That's what I've been looking for all these years. But I think it's not that easy, because I think everybody thinks that they have got consent when perhaps they haven't.
They do. And I come across that. I am quite shocked at, there are still so many practices, so many dentists, you know, a patient comes in for a consultation and the dentist is coming up with you know, oh, well, you could have this or that, and it's done in a 20-minute consultation appointment, and they could pop out to reception and out pops the estimate, which is just a confirmation that they've received it, not consent, and they're using that as consent.
Yeah,
that was 20 years ago.
Yeah,
you know, that it has evolved. It should be more now. It should be, I'm not saying complicate it, I'm saying how do these dentists, as wonderful as they are, the pressure to come up with full options in that first appointment, if there's some complicated options. I'm not saying, you know, if the patient only needs a fill-in, you know, but we could say, if what's the alternative for the fill-in, what are the pros and cons of each, you know. But, you know, patients coming back to have full options given, to be able to make informed consent, that's how the process should be now, and that's how I'm seeing, you know, the best practices are doing it, and it's a wonderful patient experience.
Absolutely. The other thing you picked up on there that's important is that you know, sort of printing off or doing it electronically, whatever, something that describes the treatment in technical jargon, and then asking the patient to sign it. You know, how on earth is the patient going to know what they're signing for when it's written in technical jargon? So actually, a really good exercise is perhaps to try and create a series of templates that describe the treatment in non-clinical, non-technical terms, or if you do put technical terms in, you explain what that means. Now, I think in all the years I've been doing patient record audits and looking at you know, consent processes and things, I've only ever seen one dentist ever send out letters to a patient that are completely understandable. You know, and I've had thousands of conversations over it, but this one particular dentist just wrote the most fantastic letters to his patients. Private practitioner, yes, but they really explain in lay terms exactly what, you know, what the problem is and what the options are, and what the risks and the benefits are. So, you know, I think, Pat, I mean, I hate templates as a rule. I hate templates, but I think creating something that gives you the information there that you do then edit to so that it fits the case, you know, I think is really important. Or even if it's just prompts. I worked with a lovely implant group a number of years ago, doing a sort of outsourced clinical director role for them. And I created something like that for them. And it was just laying out all the things you should be asking and you should include in your letter. And I think that's a really helpful thing to do.
Totally. And a lot of, you know, we ourselves and a lot of other practices now that I see, you know, we are presenting patients with options as a PowerPoint, and they love it. The options.
Excellent.
We've done it for years, and I do go to practices and sort of say, use this recipe. You will be, your mind will be blown. Your patient conversions, so patients coming in for implants, your conversion rates are 80-90+%. So when it's explained and consent's been given properly, the treatment take-up goes up. So all of these things are great. I mean, the patients are blown away by that kind of experience, but also the dentist, it's a much nicer way to work.
Yeah.
Where they're actually not having 20 minutes, right, you know, you've got 20 seconds to answer. Find out, decide, does this patient need implants? They can go off and get some other opinions from other people in the practice and that kind of thing. And it's a wonderful way. I have a bit of a thing. If a patient comes to reception and has to ask questions, something's gone wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree. Now, I think I'm a really good communicator. And I think that when I explained to my I thought that when I explained to my patients a procedure with doing it all the way you should, I thought, that's it, I've done it really well. And so, but my patients would go out to the desk and say, I'm not quite sure what she said or what she meant. And, you know, and I wrote the book, got the t-shirt, seen the film, spoken about it forever. And so it's really, really easy just to make an assumption that you have communicated when actually you haven't.
Yeah.
So
I know in my practice, the clinicians get into trouble. The clinicians get into trouble. Because reception, they've got enough to do. They're not there to, you know, and we have a treatment coordinator, we defer to them sometimes, but ultimately the clinician gets a bit of a slap bottom. But, Jenny, can I just ask, Jenny's just asked if the consent software you've just spoke about is that chairside?
The patient is given a link so that they can watch it in their own time. Or you can do it chairside. Yes, absolutely you can. So we're talking about a sort of 3 to 4 minute video here, and then the patient would answer the questions. That would be a wonderful way to do it. If you want to save a bit of time in the surgery, though, you can send the patient a link. They can watch it at home, and then the software will tell you when the patient has watched the videos and answered the questions, and when the consent process from that perspective has been completed. So, I mean, you've got absolutely nothing to lose by having a demo of it. It really is a phenomenal thing.
We'll definitely have one.
Yeah, no, do, Lisa, because it's got the potential to be life-changing, I think. But we just need to make decisions on the best ways to get the messages out there. So, Jenny, yes, it can be done chairside, and it can also be done by the patient at home, depending on the clinician and the patient's preference.
Wonderful. There was one other thing that I just wanted to sort of get your thoughts on. I've had in our practice and I've had a lot of people talking about this lately, reception teams getting really fed up with patients whinging about having to fill out new medical histories. So I kind of came up with a bit of a list of reasons why we do this, and it isn't just to annoy people. And I just wondered if you had anything to add to it. So what I've got down is medical histories. This is a requirement to ensure safe and appropriate care. We've got the Data Protection Act and GDPR that require personal and health data to be accurate and up to date. I thought that was not something I've really, obviously, you know, GDPR and data protection, but it so goes hand in hand. If we're storing medical histories and they're not accurate and up to date, that is a really good point. We've also got quite a few times when we've had people mention about gender specific things on medical histories. So our reasoning was these are medically necessary for certain treatments and medications. We need to ask them regardless of gender identity. I think having that in line with your some of your policies that are in relation to that is really good. And this is really just to kind of arm front of house a little bit. One of them that you might like is, so Care Quality Commission regulates both NHS and private providers. Their inspections assess whether records are current and complete. Regular updates help demonstrate this.
Yeah, there is another one though, Lisa, which is really important.
Yeah.
And probably the killer blow is that if you don't have an accurate, up-to-date medical history, you can't ever claim that you've got consent, because unless the clinician has all the information they require on which to base their advice and guidance, then and if you don't have a medical history, you don't have full and up-to-date information. So you can't ask the patient to consent to anything because you don't have enough information on which to base your guidance. So essentially, you can't do anything without an up-to-date medical history, not even a hygienist visit.
That's really good to know.
Because there are things in a patient's medical history that will affect what the hygienist prescribes and the treatment that they do. So it just goes across the board. And actually, in my experience, that has been the one argument that has stopped all arguments. I think that the gender one, I think, I'm not sure it is relevant to know the biological gender of somebody unless, I guess, unless you're prescribing medication that could interfere with the contraceptive pill. So there would be that. I think I'd probably struggle to think of another reason why you needed to know somebody's gender.
Well, no, it's not. We don't need to know the gender. What we're talking about is patients complaining that they shouldn't have to answer a question as to whether might you be pregnant.
Yes.
It's that.
Yeah.
It's more
that. Then yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So
then yes, definitely. Yeah.
I think it's really hard with some of these, and ultimately, I mean, you've just given us a banger there. That's it's hard to. All of these things are quite hard, to get across to patients as to, yeah, but why is that matter to me? Why is it?
Yeah. Then I think the argument, the one argument I would use would be, if we don't have up-to-date information on your medical history, we don't know what treatment to prescribe for you, and therefore we won't be able to treat you. That's it.
And it does come to that ultimately.
It does come to it. And so no medical history, no treatment.
Yeah. But then I know I witnessed one the other day. One of my lovely receptionists, she was getting a really hard time. This woman was saying, is this guidance, or have you just made it up? And my husband's practice never ask for a medical history, which was I kept my mouth shut.
Yes.
I did keep my mouth shut, but I think ultimately one of the best things that front of house can see, it's not paperwork, it's part of your care.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And again, it goes back to being bashed for doing the right thing. And
definitely. I would avoid giving too many reasons why, and I would just stick to one or two. And the biggest one of all is, in this practice, we require all our patients to complete a medical history so that we can treat them safely. And without it, we can't prescribe any treatment and be sure it's the right treatment. So if you feel that you're not able to sign, you're not able to complete a medical history form, then sadly we won't be able to treat you.
Yeah, I think it's been a bit more prevalent in our practice over the last couple of weeks, because we migrated to a new computer software system, and it moved everything, but patients now have to do a medical history from scratch. They can update it going forward.
Right, okay.
So
what you can do there is, so I've just got a very flashy, ritzy new phone, and I've had to re-input everything into it because I've got a new phone. So, and I can't access my bank account unless I put the information in. So you could blame the software, the new software, and say, we've just brought in this fantastic new practice management software. It does mean, though, that everybody does need, we do need just to go back over things that we've done previously and just make sure that they're up to date.
Yeah, no, this is wonderful, and I'm probably feeling quite negative today, because the thing you get back from patients is, oh, I suppose I'm paying for that.
Then I just say, yep.
Yeah.
And leave it at that.
I'm not moaning, because it's the nature of it, and this is what people do and say. And
I know, but Lisa, you've got a huge practice, and I can only begin to imagine
we're
how many
fine.
issues you come across every single day.
That's why I go to other practices to help them, because
I know, quite right, quite right. Goodness me.
yeah, no, it's good. Does anybody, we're just getting up to the hour,
Yeah.
does anybody have any questions for Pat that they'd like to ask? I know hopefully we've covered a few bits there. And please, before the next one, if there's something you want to ask and put forward, you can send questions ahead, and that's not a problem at all. But yeah, Pat, keep us posted with these more, how did you word it?
What?
These practices that are being penalised quite heavily.
Oh, what did she call it? Serious enforcement action.
So that's like closures.
No, not she didn't say closures, but yes, I mean, serious enforcement action is closure, but so is a list this long of things you've got to put right and somebody coming back next week.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I think there's some hot spots with compliance that they will enforce very strongly, sort of fire, radiation, Legionella, these kind of things are obviously, I know a practice that was they come down quite heavy because they'd got some developer fluid down in the cellar. From years ago, from absolute years ago, but that's obviously a fire hazard. And
of course,
it's interesting. Oh, thanks, Jen, that's really kind. Pamela, good luck.
Thank you. We're always here, so please send us your questions, and it's a complete pleasure to help in any way we can.
Yes, and like I say, if anybody has anything in between these sessions that you want to contact us and ask us about, please do. You can get in touch through Adam, through Sam, and we're not difficult to find individually either, from Dentistry Compliance, which if anyone's not had a demo before, do it. Honestly, it's really, really worth it. But get in touch with us, and we're here to help. We're all in the same boat, and it just feels a little bit better knowing you've got someone to go to.
Oh, doesn't it just? Doesn't it just?
Thank you, Sam, for organising, and thank you so much for those that have joined us, and for those listening. Hopefully catch you at the next one.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thanks,
and thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you to our listeners.